Meeting, please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Berard, Funderburk, and Levine present.
Thank you. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. My opening remarks I'd like to dedicate to the memory of our beloved former City Councilman Bill Rosendahl. Unfortunately, we are unable to attend the memorial service that's occurring for him at this moment in Santa Monica. But I want to read a brief statement and make a brief personal comment. Bill Rosendahl represented the 11th Council District, which includes the communities of Brentwood, Delray, Marina Del Rey, Mar Vista, Pacific Palisades, Palms, Playa Del Rey, Playa Vista, Venice, West LA, and Westchester from 2005 to 2013. Prior to his election, Bill Rosendahl was an educator and an award-winning television broadcaster with a long record as a leader in Los Angeles civic affairs. While he served as distinguished professor at Cal State University Dominguez Hills until his election, Bill is best known as producer and moderator of critically acclaimed public affairs television shows. An advocate of empowering people through information, Bill Rosendahl produced more than 3,000 programs over 16 years, opening the airwaves to all viewpoints and steering thoughtful dialogue on the most complex and controversial issues. Prior to his cable TV career, Bill Rosendahl was a White House appointee to the State Department as Chief of Operations for the U.S. Trade and Development Program, served as an associate in philanthropic work for John D. Rockefeller III, and worked on many political campaigns, including Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 presidential bid. On a personal note, I got to know Bill decades ago when he was doing the television show that I noted. It was a great joy to be interviewed by him on that show because he would always ask probing and thoughtful, searching questions, but he would always do it in a way that was designed to elicit information and never designed to try to put somebody on the spot or embarrass them. Bill was an extraordinarily eclectic person in his tastes and in his relationships. He could be charming as could be to the most powerful people in the country and to the least powerful people in his community. He was an advocate for the least advantaged and one of the most fair-minded, thoughtful, and sensitive people that I had the privilege of knowing. Before asking for a moment of silence, I'll ask other commissioners if they have any comments they'd like to make about Councilman Rosendahl.
You've said everything that I would say, Mr. President, but I'm sure Commissioner Berard would.
I'm really going to miss Bill. Like our president, I knew him first as the moderator of his cable show, and I was fortunate enough to be on that show several times, and he was just kind of larger than life, running up and down the halls and getting his makeup on and asking questions and just so on top of things. But then when I got to know him later, he was such a thoughtful council member. And then, unfortunately, Bill and I went through some pretty similar physical challenges. And so we really had a lot in common. We discussed our treatments and how we were feeling. And no matter when I'd see him at City Hall, he'd always say how good, oh, you look really good, and how are you feeling, when I knew that things were not good for him. And he was sitting down and he had lost weight and he wasn't his old self. But he always had a smile and he was so concerned about other people, and he was just a true, I mean, you know, we say a mensch. I mean, he was just such a lovely person, and I just, you know, I'm having trouble knowing that he's gone.
Beautifully said, Jill. So I asked for a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Interim General Manager for an hour. Do we have a reporter briefing by the General Manager?
No, we don't.
Excellent report. Comments from commissioners on agendized
We
items?
do have a speaker card for number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Speaker card on the report or briefing by general manager. Yes.
Okay, the speaker is Wayne from Encino.
It's a perfect presentation. I appreciate that. There shouldn't be any more reports. You got the money, 5 years, $1.4 billion out of the pockets of everybody, so you got the money. The only thing they have to do now is fight off the 218 lawsuit, and your general manager should have a report. If they lose in court, where's the first $718 million gonna come from if the court orders it disgorged back to the city council? I mean, from the city council back to us. What are you gonna do with all that money? $718 million. You can repair a lot of pipes with that money. That's the report I wanna see.
We move to comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations.
I do.
Commissioner Broad.
I think this is the right time for me to bring this up. Excuse me. Today is April the 5th. It's almost 1 year to the day when the representatives from the Los Angeles Unified School District sat here and talked about their program for conservation working with DWP. And at that time, I asked, is it true that the water fountains are run at each of the campuses for 30 seconds every morning? And the answer was, yes, they are. And I said, how many campuses do you have? 800. And what happens to that water when they run the water fountains? And the answer was, it goes down the drain. It's 1 year ago. That is 60,000 gallons of water a day go down the drain. And I find it hard that as a ratepayer and a resident of Los Angeles, when I'm asked to conserve, and I do everything I possibly can to conserve, that our largest customer is letting 60,000 gallons of water go down the drain every day. Now, I have been working with the school district and members of our DWP staff for 1 year to do something about that. I've created what we call the Bucket Brigade. We had everything all laid out. We were going to have a press conference to announce it. And the idea was that this water would be saved in the bucket at the local schools and then used for irrigation, since this is the main purpose. This is where they use the water at the schools, was irrigation. But nothing has happened. And so I would like to know, I would like a report as to what is happening with this program for the Bucket Brigade that has never really had it's never been announced publicly. And I'd like to know what the Los Angeles Unified School District is doing, running these water fountains every day. And are we still losing all this water? So I would like that brought back. I think at the next meeting they should be able to give us some kind of report as to what they're doing.
Marty, is that your domain?
Yes.
Will you
We'll have a report back.
follow up? Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
This is Nancy Sedley, so yeah, we'll work with Marty on getting a report back.
Great.
Thank you, Nancy.
Public comments. I understand we have one speaker card.
Yes, the speaker is Wayne from Encino.
Buckets. You worried about buckets? Why do they run the water fountains? Because They don't want toxicity and pollutants when the little kiddies start drinking that out of those dirty pipes. The water goes down the drain, that is effluent down the sewer. If you don't have that and there's not enough of it, it backs up and grows algae, and then you have to replace all the drains. They're not going to give you no buckets. There are no bucket brigades. They're not going to do anything about it. It's LAUSD school board. And they know you're wounded because Felipe Fuentes has got this little thing he's trying to do, put a ballot measure to completely reform the board. The three of you are out if that happens, so you don't want that. And you're going to take on the LAUSD board? You should be lobbying the LAUSD board to save your little junket here, to defeat the Felipe Fuentes ballot measure. And of course, the reason that they want to pass the ballot measure is to get the voters to trick them into passing authority to have you transfer up to $260 million a year from our coffers here to LA City Hall. Because right now we don't have a vote under Prop 218. So they're going to call it ballot reform, DWP reform, but it's the Trojan horse. Because if the people pass it, it gives you the legal authority to transfer money and steal it from here and give it to Herb Wesson Jr. and the council. So you got real problems. So if you want to keep your jobs, get rid of the bucket brigades and all that crap and try to defeat the Felipe Fuentes ballot measure, or go to the buckets and they'll cashew you out and support Felipe. You have no influence over them. They're in control, not you.
Comments from ratepayer advocate. We have one speaker card before we ask for the ratepayer advocate's comments.
Okay, the speaker is Wayne from Encino.
There's another job going to go out the door. So tonight, 6:30, they're going to have a special nighttime committee meeting. Last night at the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, they discussed this issue. DWP reform. Everybody wants it. But the one thing we have to do is take out any mention of transfers of money from this department to the city, called the transfers. You need to get rid of that language. You need to stop that. Stop the transfers. Now, what'll happen is they'll craft this thing, they're gonna put it in the November ballot. That's what they're gonna try to do, but it may go to the March ballot. So they're gonna create a full-time paid commission. So are the three of you gonna be on it? No. So you're gonna be out of a job. You don't wanna give this up. Look at this, this is fun. $350,000 a year for the pickle man. You get free police escorts. You get tickets to every game. You get front row parking. The Dodgers never going to black you out. You just have to call up and tell them I want a box seat. You don't want to give this up. You got the 5 years of rate hikes. So I want to see you guys defend your turf. Let's see a battle take place. I want to see a battle between you and the city council like we had in 2009. I want to see, come on, you guys aren't doing nothing. You know, get in the game, because the clock's ticking. They're going to take away your board. They're going to make it a professional scumbag board, right? And we don't want that. We want all you guys. We enjoy the puppetry. We want the puppets. We don't want a professional board that would actually give us an actual rate cut if we deserve it. No, we want to see the corruption like usual, and I know you do too. So get out there and fight for your jobs. Show up at the meeting tonight. Tell Herb Wesson, no on that ballot measure. No, we don't need reform. No, we are transparent. Yes, we are going to do a better job. Get in the game.
Dr. Pickle?
Given the discussion last January about our office's discovery efforts, I thought it timely and helpful to the board to have some additional information. We're undertaking a review of the rate process, including the discovery component, over the last 6 months of 2015 with DWP, so we can report on what works and how to improve future rate reviews. This will be done jointly with the DWP Financial Services Organization staff, and we'll report back to you. for clarity, I decide on both the breadth and the depth of discovery that I believe is needed to support our opinions that are issued. These decisions are not made by staff. Our office has always been open to suggestions by DWP staff and the general manager about these efforts. We have modified, simplified, and delayed requests in response to these conversations. Should you have any concerns about the process of a particular request or in general about the process, any one of you can call me and I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a good thing. We move to item 6, approval of the minutes of the special board meeting on March 16, 2016, at which all commissioners were present. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll take that as a motion and that as a second. Those in favor? Aye. They're approved. Do any commissioners wish to remove any items between items 7 and 20 from the consent calendar? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve items 7 through 20?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. Items 7 through 20 are approved. We move to item 21, authorization to issue up to $275 million of power system revenue bonds under resolutions number 4908 and 4909.
So this resolution is to issue new money to fund the capital improvements of the power system. It also, we are evaluating an opportunity of roughly $73 million of refunding bonds, which would reduce the cost of some existing bonds that have a call. We're going to be seeing a lot of these now that we have the rates done. We're going out to, right now, Mario Ignacio, our Director of Finance, is in New York doing for pricing of the water bonds that you previously approved. So we hope for your approval on this as well.
Any discussion? Questions, comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in
Second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's approved. We move to filed items, financial services, January 2016.
So on this report, we are going to change the format to reflect the recent rate action. So when you look at the budget, we'll change that to be consistent. In the past, we did not do that because obviously the rates weren't approved. So you will be seeing that in subsequent reports as we go forward, March forward.
Questions, comments?
I just look forward to getting a report back. I want to thank Marcy and Joe Romalo for working to develop the outreach strategy to the customers that, based on what we've talked about before, that are potentially most impacted
Right.
from a percentage standpoint, but may not have the capacity to receive all the messages in the way we've been sending them. I'm trying to work with her, with the president and other people to get this word out. But I just want to thank you, Jeff, for, I don't know if it's you can take credit for it, though, or
I'll
Dave
take
can take
credit
credit for it, for making that happen and moving on it, because this water spike that we're going to receive, again, it may be nothing to 90% of our rate base, but for 10 or 20% of our rate base, $5 or $10 in one billing cycle is still going to be noticed. And
Right.
I want to get ahead of it, make sure that people whether it's affordable housing complexes or other areas are notified in advance that they can expect this, and that it may be sometime before the balance of the rate adjustments work their way through the system. So thanks.
I have a question, Jeff,
Sure.
on the report, where we've got customer collections for water and power. How are we doing with our collections? Do we still have people that still owe money, and what are we doing to collect that money?
So let me just I'll talk about the financial where we are, and then maybe David on the customer service. So if you look on page 5 on the power system, you can see that we have come down certainly from November on our accounts receivable, dropped from about 527 down to 484. So we are improving it. This again is going to tie back into the class action lawsuit, and you can see a similar story on the water. The water on page 9. You can see that's at the $111 million. So again, it's better. It's not at the worst case scenario, but there is. I'll let David maybe talk about customer service and what they're doing working forward.
Sure, and you touched upon what's in my report, a couple down, but several things. We have reduced the level of severance activities. I mean, move down the dollar value and the amount of time an account is outstanding before we start sending, start the whole what we call severance process, which is all of the pre-notification, the notification, and in the attempt to collect. We now have more customers than ever with smaller amounts on payment plans, which is really, if you owe money and you can't pay, that's what we want most, is to allow you to retain service and put you on payment plans. Those are working. Receivables are down $100 million from a little over a year ago. We've created, we keep looking at creating different ways to pay to make it easier. So, we've done a lot of the paperless billing, and we've been signing more customers up every week on that. And finally, we added credit cards not too long ago, a couple years ago, and our credit card usage is up 30%. That's a good thing because customers can self-serve. They pay by credit card either through the web or over the phone, usually on what's called an IVR, an automated process. And with credit card payments, there are much fewer returned items. Very, very few at all of anything that's returned. The payment comes to realization. So we're trying to add ways to pay, put customers on payment plans that are having trouble paying their bill, working with those severance activities to prompt those that haven't paid their bill to continue to pay their bill. So we are continuing efforts. We are continuing to look at how to get more individuals into the collections process after if they have come off our process, and move them to a collections agency, and we're still working at ramping up that process to further reduce the
Are we
amounts.
where you thought we would be in terms of paperless?
We've actually attained our goal with paperless billing, but which was to have about 250,000 customers on paperless bills, and we have surpassed that, and we are continuing to promote that because every additional person on a paperless bill helps us save money, helps them save money, help them just improve the ease of payment.
That's good.
Thank you. Power system, February 2016.
No additional information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Excellent report.
Thank you.
RPS standard projects update, February 2016.
No additional information, I'm sorry.
Questions? CEO, February 2016.
I already added my comments.
Report for informational purposes, investment report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2015.
And again, happy to answer any questions if there are some.
Questions? Capital projects, capital projects, business retention.
We have a report.
Okay.
So I'll kick this off, and then Keisha Washington, who worked with our Economic Development Group, and Nelson Mejia from the Water Exec Office will give the presentation. But to preface this, we have struggled for a long time with the construction of major pipelines and in places where projects sit. Typically, pipeline work moves along at a pretty regular pace, and we don't disrupt any area of town for too long. But I remember when Commissioner Brad came on board, I think right away you knew the sensitivities at Moore Park and Burbank and Coldwater Canyon, where we had some what we call jacking vaults, where we had to basically tunnel under a street intersection, and we were present, really impacting businesses for quite a while. We currently have a project going on Lancashire where we are tunneling for the river supply conduit, and we'll have a 17-foot high sound wall cutting the middle of the street, cutting the street in half essentially for about a year. And so recognizing that these kind of capital projects have a very big impact sometimes on certain local businesses, but yet the city as a whole benefits from the projects. We've been looking for a way to do something to protect these businesses from the impacts of construction and to make sure that they survive financially during the course of our projects. And so what Keisha and Nelson are going to detail for you is a policy, and this is a preview of the policy. We'll actually bring it back to vote in the next board meeting, and if there's any changes or additions that you would like to have, we have an opportunity for that. But it's a policy that we're looking for the board to adopt next meeting that will allow us to put some money into a fund that we could administer to make sure that businesses are able to survive during the course of our construction projects. And it affects the department as a whole, but generally affects the water department, and particularly where we have a pipeline that we sit in front of an area for a long period of time, which is not the norm, but it does happen, and where it does happen, it's a very great impact to the community there. So I'll let them take it away with the program.
Go ahead. Good morning, Commissioners. Nelson Mejia, Water Executive Office, and Keisha. You know, just to expand on what Mr. Adams just shared with you, the water system is about to embark on a pretty large-scale infrastructure improvement program. And, you know, a lot of these large projects, you know, are going to be taking place in the public's right-of-way. So we anticipate that there may be some temporary impacts to some of the businesses in the community. Unfortunately, until this point, we haven't had, until this point, we haven't had the means to assist these businesses, you know, with their inconveniences that we're causing. So, you know, the Economic Development Office and the water system got together, and we were able to develop a policy. Now, the policy is based on something similar that Metro has in place, not quite the same, but we were able to take some aspects of their model and incorporate them into ours. And Keisha will explain the details to you in a minute. Our 10-year capital improvement program, rather, includes over 100 projects, you know, of which we've identified approximately 28 of them that we know are going to be taking place in the public right-of-way. And the map that you see here on the screen is just a sample of what the next 4 years are going to look like. These are the next 10 trunk line jobs that are going to be built in the city in the next 4 years, between early 2016 and early 2020. Some of these jobs have long durations, in some cases up to a few years. And, you know, there might be overlapping of construction activities throughout the city. So, you know, anticipating some temporary impacts, we're trying to set something up to assist small businesses. So again, this is just to give you an idea of what the, you know, projects are going to look like in the next 4 years. The challenge, it is usually small businesses located nearby our construction sites that are impacted. And as far as the type of impacts that we're talking about, include temporary loss of public parking, loss of visibility for the businesses, and you know, we actually impact their daily operations. Now, our protocol in the water system, as far as construction outreach, we set up a series of community meetings to inform them about the project. We send out notifications and via emails and you know, through door hangers and signage. You know, we install a number of signs along the projects providing pertinent information. Now, while these services have helped satisfy some of our customers, unfortunately, they haven't helped, you know, alleviate some of the impacts or temporary impacts that we've been causing to some of the small businesses. And that's why, again, you know, we were able to develop this policy. Before I turn it over to Keisha, I wanted to show you a couple of pictures. This is our Partinia trunk line. This is a job that was completed a few years ago. And as you can see, our trunk line construction crew is set up in the middle of the street. You can see a few pieces of heavy-duty construction equipment. and heavy-duty shoring setup that we have. But what's interesting is that you can clearly see that parking access to these businesses is limited. And what's interesting too is that parking on the street side is completely eliminated. So we recognize that we're impacting businesses and want to do something about it. And the last picture I wanted to show you is basically what Marty was referring to. This is a barrier that was constructed in the middle of the street. The contractor had to build it to meet permit requirements. The goal was to minimize noise in surrounding businesses and noise impacts on surrounding businesses and some of the communities. But unfortunately, the barrier being so large also completely eliminated visibility of the businesses to the point that a driver driving along Burbank Boulevard, in particular someone who's not from the area, wouldn't have an idea as to what's on the other side of the barrier. And again, those are some of the impacts that we're trying to minimize. And with that in mind, I'll turn it over to Keisha, who's just going to share the details of the policy.
Thank you, Nelson. As he indicated, my name is Keisha Washington. I'm the Director of Economic Development. And I want to thank Marty and Nelson for supporting our efforts to work together. Part of the goal of economic development is to really help retain our customers. We want to make sure that we have folks around in the local area who provide jobs, who support the things that we do. We're putting pipes and wires in the ground, and we need to have customers to pay for these things. With that in mind, we kind of looked at what the challenge was, and the challenge really was we're causing temporary inconvenience. It was also a missed opportunity for us to leverage all of our goals as it relates to water conservation and energy efficiency. So what we crafted was essentially a policy that was going to allow us to, one, help retain those businesses, keep them there, keep the jobs associated with those businesses there, as well as take the opportunity to, again, look at, have we gone out and provided them everything as it relates to energy efficiency, water conservation? Are there opportunities for solar there? As we also look at, for example, what we're doing with the electric vehicle infrastructure, are there opportunities to leverage programs we're already doing, but to be able to really manage them there? So as Nelson mentioned, we kind of examined best practices, not only at Metro. Metro took their policy from Houston, but also across the country. What are other public agencies doing to help retain those customers? Metro's policy was a comprehensive approach, and that's what we're looking at also. There is a financial element to it, but there's also an element that talks about providing access to business retention or business continuity services. These are not services normally that we at DWP do, but we want to make sure that we're able to give our customers access to what's already out there, in addition to the financial component. So I want to be clear about who we're talking about. Our target audience are the small businesses, the mom and pop businesses, those with 25 employees or less. As long as they're in good standing, they don't owe on taxes, they don't have any licensing dispute, we want to be able to assist them. They also have to have a close proximity to the project. And it's not for every water system project. It's only for those projects that have a duration of 90 days or more. And especially for the financial aspects, we want to make sure that they have verifiable losses. You can't raise your hand and say, we lost money. No, we want to go through the process to make sure that there are, in fact, impacts that we can help assist with. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the policy details. And again, we're going to bring this back to you, but this is your opportunity to tell us, are we on the right track, or are there other things you want to see? One, they're going to be eligible for financial assistance of up to $15,000 a year upon proof of documented loss and proof of that you've got expenses that you're not able to cover because of this documented loss. We also want to provide them with access to non-LADWP resources. There are myriad of resources that are available out there. We want to facilitate access to that. Some of them are already available free in the private sector, so we want to match them up with that, with resources at the city and elsewhere. But we also want to be able to make sure that we hold their hand during this process to make sure we're leaving them as good as we found them, if not better. And the way we do that, in part, again, is by leveraging all of our existing utility programs. It is an opportunity for us to maximize services we are providing. And finally, we want to do an annual audit and on-site inspections. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, the services we're providing are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that folks are taking advantage of the program who should be, and folks who are not, that we're not giving away something that we should not be. So with that, we are happy to take any questions.
Can I add one quick point? So the plan would be on these projects in the water system, these large projects that all come to the board for approval, typically to buy pipe and things like that, that in our budget, we would set aside 1% for business retention. And then what will happen is that, as Keisha said, it's only in a place where we sit in front of a business for a prolonged period of time, which is not the norm on most trunk line jobs, unless we have a vault for valves, that's a lot of construction, or a pit to jack under an intersection, or a tunnel job where it has to have a start at one point and it just sits there, as that last picture that Nelson showed. So it's to provide a way to keep those people who our construction is prohibiting them from making all their bills and their rent payment and everything else. So we have some way to assist them to stay in business during the course of the project. That's benefiting the whole city, but they're bearing the brunt of the impacts of construction.
Well, it sounds like a great project. I take it compensates only for actual expenses, not for lost profits.
Correct, for actual expenses.
Do other commissioners have comments or questions? Commissioner Broad?
Yeah, I'm concerned about this last point about lost profits. Because I had gotten, I think I talked to your department about this, calls from a man who owned a furniture store on Lancashire, and people could not get into the store, and if they did get into the store, they had to find parking, how to get into the store, then they couldn't get their merchandise out of the store. So he said, you know, I've lost a lot of money. And now he was the landlord, but his tenant was there. And now his tenant was saying, I got to get out of here. I can't stay here anymore. So obviously, he's losing money.
Correct.
So how is he compensated for that?
And
Commissioner, I think at this point, I may like to intervene because we're getting into some areas that are better suited for closed session as opposed to this assistance program that has a very limited focus. Some of the questions that you are raising
Then I'll make it general.
have specific liability concerns.
I'll try to make it more general. I'm glad you're working on this. My concern is, stop me, Joe, if I move over the line, is that we haven't had something before, so what do we do with when people have been impacted before? That's my first question. And then I wondered, explain to me a little bit more how this 1% of the project's construction budget works. How do you determine that?
First, I want to ask Joe, because I think what they're asking is retro, and is that a conversation
exactly.
offline?
So let's I'll
Stay away
be happy
from
to-
claims. Any kind of claims. Yeah.
It's what?
Some of those issues that you're raising actually deal with claims that we have. So with respect to the 1%, I tell them to answer that as they may. But with respect to the other question, again, that's a...
I'll have a chance to ask it somewhere else.
Nelson, can you explain about the timing and the 1%?
Yeah, on the 1%, you know, every project manager, when developing his cost estimate, you know, we get a pretty good idea as to what the cost for construction is, not for the whole project, but just the construction portion of it. And we don't verify that estimate until we get a bid, and we'll know exactly what the budget is. Usually the project manager allows an additional 10%, you know, as a contingency. Our plan is to use 1% of that 10% contingency for this purpose. So in our board letter, we are not asking for additional funding. It's not going to impact the water system's budget. We're going to use some of our contingents for it, 1% of it.
Nor will it impact economic development's budget.
Okay, and then when you mentioned it's for a temporary inconvenience, and then you further define that as 90 days, is that right?
90 days was the duration of the project. So there was a floor said it would only apply to those water system projects are going to be 90 days or over?
It's a little misunderstanding here. Our goal is to provide support, providing they show the proper documentation. Business impact is over 60 days.
Right.
Oh,
So,
over
our
60.
trunk-like jobs could take months and sometimes
Yeah,
years. But
that's what I'm
if our
confused about.
crews
Yeah.
are in front of a business for 60 days or more, then that business qualifies for this program.
60 days or more.
Yes.
If it's
in one spot.
in one spot,
right.
impacting the business, then they're eligible for this program.
Right.
Provided they meet the other criteria.
Right. And the 90 days of the it won't apply to short projects. So it has to be a long-term project. And then if we're in one spot, so we may be in one spot on a project, and the rest of the project may just move. But that one spot then could be eligible for assistance, because that's the person who's got us parked in front of their parking, making pedestrian access difficult for walk-in traffic. I know we had a place like that we dealt with
Okay, so
early on.
an area, for instance, on Magnolia,
Yes.
that they've been there, seems like forever,
Yes.
they're
So
impacted by that.
right. So from the time this becomes effective, then they would be eligible to say, we're impacted, because it's hard to gauge people's profitableness and whether they
Yes.
should be making more or less money. But you can look at what their costs are, their utility payments, their rent, and all these sorts of things. And if they're impacted, then they become eligible. And we have it set up so that the project manager is involved, Keisha's office is involved in verifying, and so we have several offices here that are involved to make sure that everything is handled objectively and evenly, and everything's on the up and up. But the project manager would have this money in his budget by which to help out these businesses.
Well, it says here, that the policy will allow DWP to retain and grow local businesses. And we're talking a lot about small businesses.
The reason is that in the course of these projects, they're not impacts from the definition of impact, like a CEQA impact. There
right.
are effects of us doing construction,
Right.
and so the intention is to keep these people in business and not have our projects cause them to fail before
Yeah.
we get done. So that's why it's business retention.
But in some cases, this is difficult.
And Commissioner, again, we're getting into specific cases now, so I
Well,
caution
I
against.
guess I'm confused, because I thought that this was being brought to us because we're going to adopt a policy at our next meeting, and if we don't ask the questions, then how can we talk about policy when we can't get into the details?
What I w-
It seems to me that her questions now are general. They're not referring to any specific claims.
Yes,
And-
but
And maybe I can restate some of
Please
Commissioner
do.
Barad's questions, because I'm not familiar with any specific case, and nor has it come before me. But I'll let you finish, but I have a
Go
list of things. No,
You
go
want to
ahead.
restate it?
No, I can do it after you finish.
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going now.
Well, forgetting specific areas and what I've witnessed, on paper, this sounds good. But I think in reality, it's difficult. We need to do this infrastructure. We need to do this. On the same token, small businesses are being impacted. I can't say it any more general than that.
And the suggestion I would make to both staff and the commission is that perhaps that the staff present the commission with perhaps not a final plan, but a more developed plan than what's presented today, so that you can ask questions off of that plan and provide the policy guideline without.
Are you suggesting they do that in open session or closed session?
We do it in open session.
Because once it's done in open session, the same questions are going to come up. I have trouble understanding why these questions are a problem.
Me too.
Well, I would prefer to address that in closed session.
If the questions come from commissioners who have no knowledge of any specific claims but are just general questions, is that a problem?
No.
Okay, so Commissioner Funderburk, what are your questions?
Okay. I think this is much needed. I'm glad that it's happening, and having been involved with your office and with Nancy Sutley and with Gwen on the Small Business Academy a couple of years ago and getting that off the ground. And also having to respond to people like Stuart Wildman, I can't remember his last name.
Oh, don't
but,
even mention this.
yeah, well, sorry. But having to respond to the commerce associations about what is DWP doing for business. I think that this is could be a very big tool in the toolbox, if not the toolbox itself. And for that reason, I want to be kept up to date on this, not just have it included as a package, because and Commissioner Barad, having been, I know, very involved with neighborhood councils and seeing things not just from the impacts on residents end, but also the impacts on small businesses that are, in some of these neighborhoods, the small businesses are, they're almost like real neighbors, because people get to know them like neighbors. They become like neighbors. They're important parts of those communities, and when they're lost, then that's important. A couple things on eligibility and just this program. Why have we hadn't had a program like this before?
That's a good question, and because we anticipate ramping up our infrastructure improvement, is that we feel that those temporary impacts on businesses may increase. So we want to be proactive and have something in place to help them out. I have no idea why we haven't.
So is this being done for given that the power system is 70% of our revenues and has a lot of infrastructure build-outs as well, is this being done in coordination with the power system too, or is this just a water system thing?
This is strictly a water system.
It's strictly water system in part because of the duration of the projects. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but I do not believe any of the power projects are within the right-of-way for that length of time that it's going to result in those kinds of temporary impacts.
Yeah, typically power system projects don't last that duration in the same location. We may be on a block for a month, but typically moving down the street.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't impact a business to near that degree.
So, I mean, just because you're in one block doesn't mean you're not impacting 3 blocks away. I'm, as Jill knows, being on neighborhood council, I've been in significant discussions with Metro for a while on Purple Line extension work, and I would urge our staff to either develop a working group with Metro or something, because they've been through the ringer by all of the citizen activists and the preservationists and that entire crowd, Jim O'Sullivan, Jack Humphreyville, et cetera, have, and I think that Metro has learned that being proactive is much, and telling and being forthright about everything that's going on is much better than possibly being reactive. So I would say that I would be interested in knowing, as a backup to whatever document comes back to us, what's the data behind. You said you've looked at Metro.
We do have that data. We'll present it to you. Yes.
Great. So the other thing from the RPA I would like to get is benchmarking against what other public utilities have done. This can't be a reinvent the wheel type of exercise. This has to have been done. Other utilities, especially public utilities, do have capital projects. They have things in place, and I'd like to know, if that 1% as part of a 10% is a kind of common funding mechanism or common way of measuring the funding necessary for something like this.
We'll, as a first step, look at what's already been done. It sounds like they've done some benchmarking off of Houston and Metro, and we'll report back.
Have we benchmarked off of any of the other SCAPA members or any of the other public
Actually,
utilities?
yes. when first proposing this, and just because I've come from transportation before, I was familiar with it there, but we did look at what the other utilities were doing, and no one, unfortunately, was doing anything similar to this. It's really been in the transportation industry. They've been setting aside funds to be able to do that.
So speaking of transportation, is any of this money going to go to fund traffic studies that are more detailed than CEQA documents? Because oftentimes the CEQA documents, by the way, I'm not speaking as a Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council board member here, and not as a DWP board member, but oftentimes CEQA documents fail on traffic studies, and this traffic data that's used is old, it's outdated, and it's intended to get a certain result and not intended to shine a light on what the actual traffic patterns look like. So, for instance, the DWP does a project on, Ventura Boulevard or whatever, and it's doing on a block-by-block basis, and it's not long enough to qualify for this. But is there a bigger picture that's involved in the impacts where certain businesses could definitely be impacted because the traffic is being diverted as a partial result of our project?
So, in response to that one first, so we work very closely with DOT on traffic issues. We have to have approved traffic plans. We also work very closely with the council offices because a lot of times they know other considerations that are going on in the neighborhood. For instance, we have a number of projects regarding groundwater capture, some with the county, some with ourselves, and another pipeline project, all happening in one council district. And so we're working directly on scheduling a project so there's no overlapping conflicts with traffic. But besides just within the CEQA, DOT will be very, very closely, looks at what we're doing to make sure that we're able to handle traffic issues, and if changes have to be made, we make those together. The whole issue around Silver Lake with construction right now is pretty classic, and all that's been led by DOT coordinating work through the neighborhood. So we don't do that in a vacuum, and we'll do whatever is necessary to be able to move traffic. The other thing is that besides the traffic plans, we already do work trying to make sure we facilitate parking and signage so people know businesses are open. On Lancashire, we'd already actually worked with 2 locations to reserve parking that was a block away because the small businesses were losing their street parking. But there is no, other than a program like this, there's no way to actually help them to make their monthly bills if their business went down. So we help with parking. We do those things already on top of this, but we don't have a way to help them directly without a program like this. And I think Keisha's right. In terms of Metro, we looked. There's not a lot, surprisingly, of people who do something like this. I think we found Oakland does it, Metro, Houston. And when Metro did it, I think Houston was the only model they could follow. To me, the questions become, are we putting enough aside? One of the questions is $15,000 a year enough as a max? It gets more than $1,000 a month. Metro gives 25?
50
a year.
Yeah.
And so, and they had some different rules and considerations. They also have an outside company that's administering all that.
And so would that be Skanska or somebody else?
So, and they actually are handling millions of dollars to that company to administer on their behalf.
Right,
which, of course, as you know, would be a long process.
It's a claims administrator.
Right. It'd be a long process for us to get to that point with a third party when we believe we can handle this. We can handle this through our project coordination.
So Marty, and Keisha, I have a question. One, new versus current projects. Would this be funded by current projects based on the amount that is to be spent? Is that so? It wouldn't just be for new projects. It would be for existing projects.
Right.
From the point that the policy goes in, or
Correct. And for the existing projects, it'll be funded out of the economic development budget. For any new projects going forward, it'll be funded out of the contingency for the construction portion.
And how much outreach have we done to groups like VICA, to the Chamber, to LABC, that throw all these dinners and everything? But I wonder how much they're being brought into framing and helping to at least being offered input into the process.
To be honest with you, we haven't worked with VIC or with LABC. We have worked with some of the smaller chambers. And what we've also done is we've taken advantage of the opportunity that we've had with following up with Joe Romano's group when they do the outreach to the businesses, kind of figuring out what it is that we could offer, looking back at what we do as a utility. These are the services we offer. We know that's a bucket. Looking at what Metro did, the kinds of business continuity services they were offering directly and indirectly, looking at that as a bundle, and then also looking at the financial piece. We have not taken out the full policy to anyone other than you guys without talking generally to the framework, to, again, the businesses that we've chatted with and some of the organizations up in the valley. But we have not touched base with VIC or LABC. Part of what I want to be very clear about is our target isn't necessarily the larger businesses, but it's going to be the smaller ones who may not be members of VICA or of LABC.
And so have you done any surveys or sent, do we have a list of small businesses that are under 25 employees? I had a question on the eligibility on number of employees. It says 25 employees. Some businesses could have 25 employees, and especially nonprofits. I know this from doing Boys and Girls Club work. But they have part-time and not full-time. And so is that 25 full-time or just 25 any employee?
We just had 25, but we're happy to take recommendations from you in terms of, we do have an understanding of the number of businesses out there. There's public data out there. And as the project manager, in conjunction with the outreach folks and Romano's group, they walk the block and they understand who the businesses are. So we do have data in terms of the number of businesses out there, kind of the size they are, and we compare that against other resources.
Has that all been put together in a manageable database, or is that just done on a project? I know that CEQA documents have mailing lists, right, for the radius and
Yes,
things like that.
For mailing, yeah, using 1,000 feet of a project, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, in this case, because we have one job going on right now that we know it applies to, and probably some lingering work in the jobs that you've been impacted on, we know the kind of the scope of that area, and we're working with the local council office to help us identify the businesses and make sure we had a good handle on that. We have not looked yet at all the impacts of the future projects, partly because projects aren't even designed yet, so we don't really know exactly where those impacts will occur. At this point, the ones that'll be most immediately affected, we have a pretty good handle on, and one of the things we have not been talking broadly about this because we didn't know what the board's reaction to this proposal would be, and so we didn't want to create an expectation without some agreement that you thought this was a good policy, a good direction to go.
Marty, do you have any idea, or Keisha or Nelson, what numbers are we talking about here?
Do you remember how many?
In terms of the funding stream, the annual funding stream.
Numbers as far as number of businesses?
No, I'm talking about the amount. How much money are we setting aside for this?
Well,
under this 1% formula.
Well, the map that I showed you with the next 10 trunk line jobs that are going to be built in the next 4 years. Again, these projects are in different stages. A couple of them are being constructed as we speak. Some of them are being designed. They're in planning. But for the next 4 years, we're looking at $480 million construction cost, and 1% of that is about $4.8 million. Okay. That's a rough estimate, because some of the construction estimate for these jobs are.
And the jobs under construction right now, correct, is about $250,000, $300,000 worth of
for
funds.
Foothill.
Over like for server link for the RSC, something in that neighborhood.
Well, as a general matter, what happens when a business has been impacted? How do they make a claim through this process?
Okay.
Well, claims is separate, so I want to be very clear about that. There is a claims process. That information is provided that goes down a separate track. The intent with this is once a business has either contacted the project manager or through the community outreach, we will have a flyer and they'll be able to contact my office directly. In the future, we hope to have additional resources to help, but there'll be an intake form, and at that process, we'll start documenting not only what their losses are, but what are some of the other services we can provide them in the interim. Including looking at whether or not they've taken advantage of anything we've done. We will also be working with customer service to look at their billing and to make sure to see if there's anything that we need to do to help adjust, to spread out the payments, to make sure they don't fall behind on their GWP bills as well.
So if you have been impacted, then you're out of luck, it sounds like. Is that right, or not?
Are you talking retro?
Retroactively?
We didn't have a program in place
Okay,
at the time.
okay.
So yes, this is a new program moving forward.
And from the standpoint of going forward, what would you say is the time frame that you're expecting? Say we didn't have any questions, and when were you planning on coming back before the board? with
Next
this?
board meeting?
Okay, so you're planning on coming back before the board next board meeting for us to
Yes.
approve this policy?
Correct.
So what capacity do we have to support this program, given that Marcy Edwards has been going around telling everybody that we are having difficult time with capacity just on constructing infrastructure, much less handling something that sounds like is a new, something that's new that we're doing?
We expect between our respective staffs that from the time this program's in place that we'll be able to help businesses within 30 days is our plan.
And we have internal capacity to manage this.
And we're getting additional capacity as we speak.
No, do we have internal capacity to handle this right now?
We have the internal capacity to start on day one. Now, as they ramp up, as we get more projects, we will be bringing on the resources concurrently. So I don't anticipate any problems with meeting our 30-day deadline.
I'd like to see the neighborhood councils reached out to. Neighborhood councils are not just about residents. The neighborhood, I'm a GWC member, Jill is, Fred was. And I know this because I walked La Brea and Wilshire several times the past year and a half to notify businesses about the Purple Line construction. And nobody knew what was going on. Metro hadn't notified them. Metro said that they had notified them. Some of these small businesses, they require kind of somewhat direct contact. And now I know we're not putting in a Metro station either with 7 years of construction. So it's a little different in terms of the outreach. But I would just say at least try to reach out to the neighborhood council leaders who can get the information. I certainly will pass it along, but I think that before bringing it back to the board, I'd like to see some more evidence that we've, met with and talked to some of these people.
I can tell you, and on the job of the river supply conduit, there's been a lot of outreach because of this whole issue of trying to provide parking and trying to do any kind of mitigation we can. So we've had a big relationship with them because we had an earlier interruption, and then the contractor just mobilized again about maybe a month or so ago. So we're well aware of all those folks. One of the reasons that we are able to move on this right away with Keisha's existing staff is that we only have a couple jobs right now that are impacted by this. So we have the tunneling job, and then the job over, I guess, is it the one on Magnolia? We have Magnolia, Burbank, and that whole stretch over there. We have a couple particular hot spots. So we don't have an overwhelming number of jobs that this would apply to. We're breaking ground on Foothill Trunk Line. There will be probably a couple instances along there, but it's not so much right now that we can't handle. So we definitely can get ahead of that. One question I have: do you think we're offering enough assistance? That's one of my concerns of whether we think this is enough
I'm
to be
interested
meaningful.
in the question I asked before and what Fred comes back with, and Keisha, that 1%, whether if that is a common method of funding, is that a good figure? And the 1%, I don't know. This is first I've heard of it, so I don't know whether that's a good number.
Since it's a policy, we could always modify if it's not enough.
Well, and I have a question also in terms of, are we offering enough? This gets into a murky area, but I can foresee, just looking at the picture that you put up on the screen, I didn't see how anybody was going to have access to that particular business during that particular construction. And I can see people being severely hurt during this time. So shouldn't we be thinking about some compensation for demonstrable lost profits as well? I know that gets into a much murkier area. And I also, let me ask a council a question. Before I do it, I've been waiting for an appropriate time all meeting to welcome back Joe Bryavich.
Thank you for quite a welcome.
We still want to welcome you back.
Should have said so during my remarks, but was so focused on Bill Rosenthal's passing that I neglected to do that. But Joe, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're very, very pleased to see you and be able to cross-examine you now.
Very, very pleased and honored to be here and be cross-examined.
Do we have any liability in the context of projects such as this for lost income, lost profits, inability to make payments? I mean, separate and apart from this program, which I think you've seen by the questions, we all like the general concept. The question is how much. But do we have liability in these areas?
In speaking in general terms, in situations like this, there are often inverse condemnation claims that are asserted, and there are legal standards that need to be met to assert and prevail on those claims, and those claims do arise in the course of projects such as this, as is common with every public works project in the state and across the country. Those claims do arise.
And the inverse condemnation, can that be temporary?
I'd be happy to provide you with a full briefing on the requirements for someone to prevail on an inverse condemnation claim when it comes to issues such as access.
Okay, I don't want to inadvertently start getting into specifics. I mean, this is designed to be just general information.
So there are access issues that are a component of the inverse condemnation claim.
So I guess my policy question is, short of actual inverse condemnation, if you've got a project such as the ones that you've outlined that effectively closes off a business for a period of time, can we and should we be doing more than what you're outlining here? I mean, that's kind of the question that's reverberating around in my brain.
And that's why we didn't want to put you up for a vote the day we brought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just a quick thought. We recognize that this may not be a perfect policy. You know, I truly believe that we can learn a lot from it in the next few months, and we could make the commitment to come back here and share some of those lessons learned, and if adjustments need to be made to the policy, we can probably make them.
So you're thinking it would be a pilot project to be built upon as a foundation?
Yes, it's a learning opportunity. I think we have all of the elements of a good policy. I think the question becomes, as you raised, for example, is the dollar amount enough?
Right.
Are the service offerings, are those enough? Are the other ones enough? I think we have all of the buckets. The question is what goes in the buckets.
Can demonstrable lost profits be included in the bucket?
Commissioner, I'm going to say that now you're looking at things that are normally part of a inverse condemnation claim in that process, as opposed to a policy like this that's designed to provide some assistance.
So what you're suggesting is if there are lost profits, there is a vehicle for seeking them, and that is inverse condemnation.
If there are lost profits that are compensable as a result of the activity, there is a vehicle for pursuing those.
And is that a case if it's over a limited period of time? My understanding of condemnation in general is that it's if you've permanently lost the use of a particular piece of property. I may be wrong about that. Is temporary loss?
Again, without getting into specifics that are more appropriate for a closed session discussion, it is not limited to permanent takings.
I would appreciate a closed session discussion on this if we're inhibited from a more thorough understanding of this in open session, because in a way there are more questions than answers, and it's really hard to. we all like the idea. I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking for my colleagues based on their questions. We all like the idea, but we're having trouble grasping how far it should go. And it may be necessary or helpful, if we can't really get into these questions in open session, to have that discussion in closed session before we vote.
I think it's a great idea, because it's not our intention to be cagey, but I understand that probably we have to have that discussion.
I did have a couple of follow-up questions to President Levine's, because I didn't want to imply that I wanted to put this off. I actually was going in the opposite direction. It sounds to me like there will be businesses that will be prejudiced if we don't do this pretty quickly, because their ability to claim under any policy that we're considering is not going to be able to look back. It'll just be able to look forward from the point that we adopt the policy. Is that right?
That's correct.
We actually had discussed possibly setting the start date at the beginning of this last big project they just started, because we'd hoped to get this here a little sooner. So that would, I wouldn't say.
So the start date can be backdated somewhat from the time that there's action.
Because we had this one big project that started that we were hoping to meet, and it's just taking longer to get there, so. But that'd be up to the board's discretion.
I can't imagine that the board would object to that.
So I would look forward to being kept in the loop, and if Commissioner Broad wants to work with me directly out of the context of the board meetings on working with Nelson and Keisha and you, Marty, we'd be happy to. I can't speak for her, but I'd make myself available for a call or two, just so that we can relay the information, et cetera, because I have actually done claims more pro bono for businesses trying to fill out the Metro form, so I'm really familiar with, sure you are too, with what's allowed, what's not allowed, and you expect the you get the denial, and then you kind of keep on pushing, but some of these businesses, 15,000, they're not in business if that's really going to make a difference, because that's not really a business that relies on that much money. But when you start pushing the numbers up a little more, then it does ease some of the pain for them.
Perhaps, and not to be sensitive to the Brown Act, maybe we could have Funderburk and Broad, if they're interested, as an informal subcommittee on this to look at it and come back. Any problems with that procedurally?
If we're going to be a subcommittee, then it would be a notice subcommittee.
Well, but if the two of them informally were to look at it, that would not create any problems.
Correct.
Okay. If they're so inclined.
Yes, I'm definitely inclined. Can I make one more? Okay.
Go ahead.
We're talking about outreach, and we're targeting smaller businesses in this program. I would suggest that outreach be made to the local chambers of commerce, and because that is the small businesses in all of our communities. Also, neighborhood councils by the charter, by law, must be composed of business people who are business owners. And I think that certainly you want to contact neighborhood councils, because this will impact the communities, it will impact their business people. And then also the Economic Alliance of the San Fernando Valley, which has a lot of small businesses, they will be impacted. So I think there's a lot of areas to do some outreach to let people know that this policy will exist. And then I think just to say that, I think this is a good policy. My concern is what happens, retroactively. I think that's a concern. And then also that I think we have to consider loss of profit. However that happens, I think if I were a small business owner, that's what I would be, concerned about. You have to look at it.
So I think there'll be some further deliberation, but hopefully an expedited result. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2015 Power Integrated Resource Plan.
Yes, Commissioner. We're going to ask John Dennis to come up and do a presentation on our 2015 Power Integrated Resource Plan and also highlight our stakeholder process for our 2016 Power Integrated Resource Plan.
Well, good afternoon. John Dennis, Director of Power System Planning and Development, and I have with me also Jay Lim. He's in our Integrated Resource Planning group and does a lot of our research and analysis in the background on our sizable Integrated Resource Plan. Today, this afternoon, I have just 10 slides briefly to update you on the Integrated Resource Plan for 2015, the results of that, some of the highlights, and then talk briefly about the 2016 plan for outreach. A reminder about our Integrated Resource Plan is the odd-numbered years we do a tune-up on our resource plan, and the even-number years, which is 2016 we're going into, we do our public outreach effort that's sizable. This slide here just shows you the pie chart of where we are and where we're going, and it just shows you that our effort towards 2030 is a 50% renewable portfolio standard. Last year that was looking at 40%. We're now at 50% as a result of Senate Bill 350. As well, we see the energy efficiency efforts going up above 15%. The key elements on the IRP that are affected by this are to eliminate coal from our power supply, to reach 33% by 2020 and 50% renewable by 2030, to achieve 15% energy efficiency by 2020, to take our generating stations off the once-through cooling using ocean water, to increase our electric vehicle use and invest in our power system reliability program. The way we're going to also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is by sizable efforts in energy efficiency. We're transitioning off coal and integrating solar, wind, geothermal, and some natural gas, as well as vehicle electrification. The major accomplishments for 2015 are hitting 20% RPS, sale of our Navajo generating station. We sold 477 megawatts of that and acquired also some geothermal in that process, 55 megawatts. A big milestone here was accomplished in December of repowering Scattergood Unit 3. That was a sizable accomplishment by many of our forces there for a 500 megawatt power block on the west side. Also ongoing and is going to occur here is our Barren Ridge Renewable Transmission Project, bringing in renewables from the Eastern Sierras, and then a blend of our geothermal and solar projects that are either in service or are going to be completed here in this quarter. This diagram just shows a mix of our dependable capacity, and what's changing in there in the dependable capacities in the upper right is our capacity shortfall, which is reduced sizably due to more renewables being packed into our system. And as well, what we're enjoying is some better pricing on those. The next slide just shows our various scenarios and the cases that we looked at. We had a variety of those looking at a mix of 30%, 50%, and higher as far as renewables, and a mix as far as electrification on our electric vehicles. And what's notable here in these curves, we are already below 1990 emission levels for CO2 emissions. These two dips, this curve here is just simply showing just what the impact is of coal replacement. And so these two big dips that we see here is Navajo coming off, and then we see Intermountain Generating Station coming off in 2025. And so that's a sizable reduction in itself. But with all the other renewables, our proposal is number 6, case number 6, which is down here with some high electrification and 50% renewables. And then the dotted line, the difference between case number 6 and then the dotted lines down here is if we attribute also the CO2 reduction from our electrification. And that's a sizable item that we need to continue to work for collectively as a city to get credit for the electrification. We will generate more power to charge those vehicles, but we believe there's a ratio of 3 to 1 on those that we can get. We should be able to get those CO2 emission credits for that. And so that brings us basically down into that level, and our target is to be below the 80% below 1990 emission levels by 2050. And this is keeping us on target with those credits as well for case number 6. Moving ahead, this is just one maximum generation renewable energy penetration study. And it's a simple, there's a lot to this, but let me just say is that this would be a typical day in February of 2025. And we're seeing the mix as far as what's happening on our load. But this blue line just shows you every single afternoon what our generators are going to have to do to ramp up sizably and meet this. Because what happens here at this particular time of day is the sun sets. With a high dependability as far as a large amount of solar in our mix, we know for certain that the sun will set. And so with that, as the sun sets, we're going to have to make up that because our customers are coming home, turning on the air conditioners. Some factory loads are still residing here, coming in at 5, 6 p.m. And this is what's going to have to be made up in some fashion if we can't shift that load over some way. So this is going to be something we're going to have to continue to work on. And this is just part of the studies that we do. We believe we have the capacity and capability with our newer units going into the system. The next slide just shows what's happening in our solar program. Basically a combination of having 800 megawatts of local solar and 1,800 megawatts of large-scale solar for a total mix in there of 2,600 megawatts of solar. This chart just shows some of the average retail rate contributions, and it just shows you the contributing factors of what affects and impacts our rates. What is important is down in this lower left-hand piece. This does reflect our current, the actual and approved rate case action, but it does show you and it starts to spread out as we see from in 2035 the contributing factors of coal replacement, fuel, once-through cooling, energy efficiency. So it shows you those contributing elements towards rates impacts. For 2016, our outreach process is underway to identify 2 pieces. One, an advisory committee that's very, very similar to our mix from prior years, to have a blend of people on that advisory committee of academia, neighborhood councils, customer groups, environmental groups, as well as some representation from our current governance. We plan to kick off that advisory committee in May and formulate the various cases to be studied by Jay and his team there. And then we'll review and provide comments. The advisory committee will look at the impacts of those various studies, as well as to have some public outreach workshops similar in the past that will sprinkle those workshops throughout the Los Angeles area. Our focus for next year for this IRP is to look at fossil-free generation and see the impacts on that. We'll also look at IPP, details of IPP, a replacement of coal, and some of the technical capabilities to do that. We'll also be looking at energy storage, seeing some of the needs and requirements of that. We'll take a true up and evaluate where we're at with demand response and electric vehicles, and then looking very specifically at some of the impacts and benefits of installing smart meters, which will happen in the next 3 to 4 years in our system. The good news is we're on target for 25% by the conclusion of this year for renewable portfolio standard. And I would point out that in your monthly reports, we keep a detailed report. We show that to you on your monthly reports about how we're going to make that 25%, whether it be through purchases, market, activity. This is in your monthly report. So we keep you on target there. You can see the reality check, but we're on target for 25%. And that concludes our report. This is informational today, but if there's any comments or questions, we'd be glad to take those.
Comments, questions?
I did have a, on the energy efficiency end, I think it would be helpful to, for me to know, because we fund a lot of things for our energy efficiency program, and I understand we get credits for reducing our, customers' energy usage or for participating in that, and it'd be helpful to know how that process translates to money, because sometimes in my brain there's a disconnect, but when it's explained to me, I understand that some of these energy efficiency programs that we're using to fund things that relate to energy efficiency actually make a whole lot of sense. They make economic sense. They make regulatory sense as well, because we're under regulatory mandates. So it doesn't have to be anything long, but something just kind of drawing that nexus would be would be helpful to me. The other thing is we've talked about expanding our infrastructure for chargers and things and other items to plan for the infrastructure and the change in our portfolio to do that. I wonder if that's is that going to take anything that's different from what we've already seen in terms of additional investments? My first reaction to seeing the last charger procurement was, why don't we do 10 times this number? Because somebody's going to have to build it out, somebody's going to have to take the lead on it, and if these are our potential customers, the electric car owners in the future, we're investing in developing a new line of business where we're actually losing load from other things, whether it's net metering or other ways that we, losing load from our existing customer base that where we're not getting paid for it. Is that something that you anticipate bringing before us, a more robust charging program to support the electric mobile vehicle infrastructure?
The answer is yes, that there's a combination of both the energy efficiency programs, demand response, and electrification.
Mm-hmm.
Those three, we need to continue to work on this part of the integrated piece, that they're all continuing to work in harmony, not just for the short term, but also for the long term as we see what's going to happen in 2025. But through that specifically would be, for example, with the EV chargers, there are some opportunities that are there to shape that load curve and to perhaps shift them into areas where we have capacity and take them out of some of those peaks. Or it could be what we think is going to happen in this next 10 years is that demand curve will flip almost completely upside down. When we have excess generation from renewables that are on the system, those will be opportune times. So as we look at that, there's some sizable marketing efforts, pricing indexes. Those will all undergo some radical changes, and we need to look ahead not just at the short term 2 and 3 years, but it'll also be in the 10-year term to see how those fit.
I'm very interested in this, and I assume that storage comes into play at some point here as well.
Absolutely.
Assuming that technology catches up to the overgeneration.
That's the key word, as the technology matures and is available for us. That's correct. And so we do see that that's going to be part of the 2016 IRP and see how energy storage works in that mix.
And lastly, I know I can feel Marcy Edwards just chomping at the bit to say, because she loves power. She likes power, as in water and power. But the last thing is there was no mention of geothermal, and I know that the resources are limited around the state, and Salton Sea isn't always all it's cracked up to be. But do we see geothermal in the next 10 or 20 years being any material part of our portfolio, or is it still just going to be what is it, 0.5 or 1% or of our generation?
Yeah, in our geothermal mix, right now we have 69 megawatts in our mix, and we see that over the next 20 years or so, we can see 300 megawatts at least into that mix, and we have some opportunities for some gradual increases in the western region here for geothermal.
Okay.
I see we have a surprise visitor here.
Thank you for allowing me to drop in. Since I didn't hear the presentation, I want to make sure you touched on the actual energy storage projects that you are undertaking. Was that covered earlier?
We just said that will be part of the studies that are happening right now. But the energy storage, there are some, we're looking at an aggressive short-term program. There's some that will happen right here at the JFB office building, just out to the side of our building, to look at that, to mix as a combo between the solar panels that are existing here at the building and sit right off to the side as part of that. And we believe that there will be still some learning curves that will be there in this energy storage technology, as well as some opportunities. We've built a large cluster of solar out in the Mojave area, just about 20 miles north of Mojave Junction. And so we're seeing some opportunities up there in the short term, depending on both the permitting and the procurement cycle, to try to get some battery storage, energy storage up there before the close of this year, and perhaps as soon as September.
I keep hearing from outside sources, I have no idea whether they're ill-informed or well-informed, about all kinds of dramatic breakthroughs in battery storage for renewables. So,
There are.
and
But I would say as well as that as we watch, there will be even ribbon cuttings, and there's battery storage that's out there. There are different pricing markets as we watch those closely. For example, we look at the Hawaiian Islands, and it's a very attractive market for battery storage, but they're charging about 4 times the price of what we're charging our customers today. So it's attractive on a market basis, but they're using them. And I think that they're learning from some of the older battery storage technology. They've gone to the lithium-ion types. They'll stress those in a big way. That's almost like a petri dish that they're going to experiment with those and cycling those batteries. And we'll learn from some of that as well. So there are opportunities. Locally as well, we'll watch these rollouts. There's several large rollouts that our local utilities are required under AB 2514 to implement various levels of energy storage. They've done some requests for proposals. What's interesting as we look at those is the rollout period on some of those requests for proposals start early, but then they allow them to go to about 2020 or 2022 in the time frame. So some of those proposals, as they've done some large, we're talking 100 megawatt, that's a big storage battery. Those aren't required to be in service until about 2020 time frame. So there is, from what we can understand from the market right now and talking to those, we believe that there'll be a sizable maturing within this next 2 years. They'll start to see those technologies start to stabilize a bit. Some of those will rise up, and we believe that there'll be some opportunities to strike on that market in the near term.
any other questions or comments on this agenda item?
No, but I'm very encouraged by this.
Some brief
and I
comments,
like our-
if I may.
If I could add one more, and that is with our request for proposal we have on our renewable projects, we are also making provision right now in the 2016 offering to allow for some component of energy storage in those also. So as those proposals come in, we'll see those too.
I appreciate the technology agnostic approach as well. So I really think that proud to be a part of this.
Dr. Pickle.
Two comments, just so I make sure I understand, John. On the carbon emissions chart, that also reflects implicitly the benefits of rooftop solar as well, even net metered rooftop solar, and also conservation because demand is reduced, therefore generation is reduced. Is that correct?
Correct. So with the rooftop, the net metered program, right now we're not getting the percentage benefit directly on the 25-30% RPS. But what it is doing is it's reducing the denominator, and that's correct. And we have some sizable increases that have happened in our net metered program, so it's ramping sizably right now as we speak.
And then a second point on storage, John also showed the very fast ramp rate that's required in the generation. To do that, you have to have typically these new gas-fired generators starting up in rapid sequence, one after the other during that period. To do that, you need gas supply. And for that, you need gas storage capability. Unfortunately, gas moves at 30 miles an hour, and power moves at nearly the speed of light, so it has to be nearby.
Other comments, other questions? Before we ask Dr. Brajovich for the magic closed session words, does the general manager have anything she wishes to share now that she's been able to break free of some other urgent business?
Very briefly, sir, I did want to remind the board, you'd had a public presentation a few weeks ago regarding the loss of SoCalGas's Aliso storage facility and the fact that gas cannot be reinjected until all the wells have been inspected or isolated. There was a detailed presentation made to members of the state legislature this morning. There was just a press call with the heads of the regulatory agencies, the PUC, California Energy Commission, Public Utility Commission, California ISO, and us. There was a lot of interest from the media, so you can expect to see and potentially even get questions with respect to what the impacts are from LA. and we'll be happy to answer any questions that come to you.
Thank you. Council?
At this point, we will recess into closed session to address the items set forth in Agenda Item 24, and in accordance with the California Government Code, we will report any final actions taken there.
We will recess into closed session.